Hello, and welcome to another art camp video. Today, we are going to be creating an imaginary ant habitat using some mindful drawing. For this, I used heavy paper. I used watercolor paper, watercolor pencil crayons, watercolor paint, black marker, black paint, and a paintbrush. Now, remember not to fret, use what you have, and get creative. Okay, so this first line that I drew with a off-brand Sharpie marker was just my imagination of ants tunneling underground. There was no rhyme or reason. I just made a bunch of squiggly lines. And then up top, I drew what, in my perspective, is the ground. So that wiggly, squiggly brown area would be the top of the ground. And then all of these trails and seemingly random loops are what I imagine the ant tunnels underground look like. So you use your imagination and have fun taking your pen for a walk and creating random loops. I like to go over my loops, my lines, and thicken some parts, smooth out others. So that's what I'm doing here. This is not a necessary step, but in my personal artistic style, I think that the lines look better if parts of them are thicker than others. You and I are different artists, so yours is going to look like yours and mine is going to look like mine. The parts you want to focus on are the spaces in between your lines, the shapes created by the loops and turns. Those are the parts we are going to use for the next step. So once you're happy with your shapes, once you've gone over them and smoothed the lines and you create all these shapes, we're going to move on to the next step, which is watercolor pencils. Now, you can use regular pencil crayons and markers for this. You do not need watercolor pencils, but as you know, I am a big fan. I created this going in rainbow order. I love going in the order of the color wheel. I cannot handle going any other way sometimes. It was the only way I could. So I started with yellow, and then I moved into orange, reds, and pinks. And there was no rhyme or reason, but as I went, it started to create itself. Now, there's another way to do this, which is have no colors similar touching. So colors that are next to each other are not similar at all. And that's going to create a very different, beautiful piece of art. So what speaks to you? Do you want to go in color order? Do you want to have all one color? Do you want to try different colors? Once I was going through this, I started to notice that there were certain parts that I didn't want to color. I wanted them to be black. This was totally random. So you could pick certain parts of your underground tunnels and color them in. See, I am here using my off-brand Sharpie and coloring them in, making a negative space. I really like that. I end up going back and adding more because I like it so much. This is totally optional, but I do recommend trying at least a little bit. Then I go over with my water and I add some watercolor to my spaces, blending and playing as I go. Of course, I'm listening to awesome music, enjoying playing with the colors, taking my time and getting it just the way I like it. Now, the way you like it is going to be different from the way I like it. But once you're done, you can add some grass to the top. I used a wet on wet, just some watercolors, but you could use markers. You could do any number of things to create the grass, the top of your picture. This is the fun part. It's also the part that's going to take the most amount of your time and your focus. But I created different patterns for each color. Now, orange was kind of these sharper, straighter lines. Red was a little bit flowy. And I was using a fine tip Sharpie, but I switched to just a black ballpoint pen because that worked better. Experiment, find what you like, and aim to do the same type of lines in each color. So all of the oranges have a similar vibe. They're not exactly the same, but they have a similar pattern. All of the yellows, I did almost a root type line pattern, and I drew roots and then I just covered in all the other spaces around the roots that I drew using that pen and lines. So this is something I do often. You could come up with any number of patterns to fill in your underground ant fortress. I like to use lines and lines and lines and lines and lines. I find this very relaxing. Now remember, we are different artists and different people, so you may have a different way that you want to fill in your compartments of your underground ant cave fortress amazing creation. So on the pink ones, I did almost like worms. They're really wormy. And then on the purple ones, I did mountains and filled in mountainy type lines. And you can just go through picking different lines and experimenting with creating different patterns. Now, again, it's just a suggestion to do a different pattern for each color. I found it kept it interesting. It was enough of a creative challenge that it kept me focused. So that's something to consider for you, but this is your art. You do it the way it looks good to you. By the time I got to the bottom, I was running out of ideas and I had to take a break and then come back to it. Then I thought of some waves, so I just drew a wave. And then this one was super different and super fun. I did intersecting lines and then I colored it in a checkerboard pattern, which was challenging because my lines weren't all lining up. But that's okay. That little bit of a creative challenge gives you an opportunity to problem solve. And from that problem solving, from that little bit of challenge, comes learning and awesome creations. Remember, I'm going to say it again and again and again. There's no way to get this wrong. Just by doing it, you're already getting it right. So you are going to continue on with this, filling in every single part of your underground ant city. I'm going to keep calling it different things. It could be anything. Then there were certain ones that I didn't want to color. They just didn't seem right to do a pattern in, so I colored them in with the marker. This is the fun part. You get to add your ants. Now, you can look up the silhouette of an ant, but it's basically a big oval and then two small circles and another oval with the antenna coming out the top and 6 legs, because ants are insects. And I added some underground, some above ground. And I suggest spending some time watching ants. They're super cool. Look at the shape. Draw what you see. What is the shape of your ants? How are they moving? They're really interesting communal animals. And even though they're tiny, I think they're pretty sweet. All right, here's a reminder. Take a big belly breath. Let's remember that this is just for fun. There is no way to get it wrong. And just by trying, you've already got it right. I would love to see what you created while you were having fun. You can send it to the address in the description for this video, and I will check it out with joy. Thank you so much for creating with me. Subscribe for more of these videos and have a beautiful day.